Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Taking the Lead. I'm your host, as you know, Ken Jacobs of Jacobs Consulting and Executive Coaching. And if you've seen even one of these, on Taking the Lead, we get to interview people who are mostly from PR, marketing, comms, etc., advertising. But we feature them here not for their PR or comms skills, though they have that in abundance, but because they are respected leaders. They are known in the industry for leadership. I respect them as leaders. Sometimes it's a friend, sometimes it's an acquaintance. Today, I'm about to introduce someone I have admired from afar for a very long time. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Rochelle Ford, APR. You know, she's the CEO of the Page Society, which is the leading global community of senior communications leaders. But listen to this resume. Previously president of Dillard University, dean and professor Elon University, professor Howard University, and if I may, most dear to my heart, professor and chair of my alma mater, Syracuse University, S.I. Newhouse School of Public Communications, where she revitalized the program enough so that it won PR Week's Education Program of the Year, which it recently won again. So, real legacy there. She has been recognized as a Page Distinguished with the Page Distinguished Service Award and a PR Week Hall of Fame inductee. I'm having a serious case of I'm not worthy, but I'm going to go forward anyway because I've seen her before and she's delightful. Let's welcome Dr. Rochelle Ford. Thank you so much for being on Taking the Lead.
Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be on your podcast. Thanks for.
Thank you so much. So, the Arthur Page Society, if you don't know, its purpose is to create community among the world's senior communications leaders to help them improve business and society. What's your particular vision for Page as CEO?
So, Page is an amazing organization, and my vision for Page is really to ensure that we are a global community, one that really is providing the most pioneering thinking for our profession, but really on that lens of leadership. And how do we continue to build that community with top chief communication officers, executive search firms, agency leaders, top educators, and bringing all of them together to support and as the mission said, to improve business and society. And we do it in an ecosystem of peer-to-peer learning and engagement. So moving into that global scale is what I hope to do.
Big, big challenge. Something tells me you're up to it. So, speaking of purpose, what's yours? What's the life mission for Dr. Rochelle Ford?
So, my life mission is really grounded in my faith tradition as a Christ follower. And it really is to help people to develop in their own professional lives, whether it's students or it is the leading communication executives in the world. And it is really building community in places where people feel like they can belong. At the end of the day, that we all can work together to advance our society.
Very nice. So, three leadership heroes, and please tell us why.
So my first leadership hero is my dad, Raymond Tillery. He's deceased now, but he is a
Sorry.
leadership hero because no matter where he showed up, he was authentic to himself, but he really worked to help others. Be it breaking down barriers at AT&T, becoming one of the first African American leaders there, or establishing a parent organization for Black families in our school district, which African Americans were being treated differently, and the Rivera is a very small community. And so he always had a voice. He stood up for right. Dr. Barbara Hines, who's actually one of my mentors. Dr. Barbara Hines, Caucasian woman, blonde hair, blue eyes from Texas, and she taught her whole career at Howard University. And I believe that she's a prime example of a servant leader because she would do whatever she needed to do and wouldn't ask people to do more than what she was willing to do and give. And so, whether it was accreditation reports that she would write, if it was bringing students to conferences and introducing them to her network, she would provide leadership by doing and living by example and being willing to be a minority, which oftentimes you don't think about Caucasians being minorities, but at one of the most preeminent, predominantly and historically Black universities, she was. And she yet and still led the program, led individuals, and built community. And then the final is Ofield Dukes, and you might see in the background his poster because he left his memoir for me to publish. And Ofield, again, was a dynamic leader. And he also, like my dad, be true to yourself. And how do you show up authentically? How do you speak truth to power? But how do you build coalitions of authentic leadership?
Wonderful, inspiring examples. You know, one thing about, when we talk about Barbara Hines, it reminds me how brave to be in a minority setting and be the minority and hopefully learn from that. And the classic, walk in someone else's shoes. I'm sure there were great lessons for her in all of that. And the notion of leaders leading by example, not asking your people to do what you're not willing to do. There's a great Ralph Waldo Emerson quote I probably mentioned here before. What you do speaks so loudly, I cannot hear what you say. And I think for too many leaders, they talk a lot about what it stands for and the values of our organization, how we show up for one another, as you said, et cetera, et cetera. But the best way to do that is to take the action, to live the values. And anything you ask your people to do, demonstrate that you're doing it, right? A leader who is courageous and willing to do that is inspiring. So, for the lesson for leaders, talk less, walk more, right? Walk the walk. So, speaking of inspiring, I was inspired to invite you onto the podcast. It goes back to a Museum of PR panel in February of this year, and it was called Bending the Arc of History to Social Justice, a Communicator's Role. Just a very powerful name, I thought. Now, since the start of the year, and especially since that panel, it does feel to me and many of us that programs built around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I use all three phrases, I think, because some people seem it's easy to say I'm against DEI, whatever that means. But then you say to them, well, what are you against? The diversity or equity or inclusion? Hopefully that sparks a light. But at any rate, they are under fire. What's your best counsel to communicators who wish to achieve the diversity, equity, and inclusion goals for their organization in this environment, which has changed?
Sure. So I appreciate your question. I think one of the key things is what do you mean and what are your goals? So, what people are against are wasteful programs where people were spending money and not seeing outcomes that were reflective of it, or were creating programs that were divisive. So, for me and for Paige, what we are doing is leaning into the outcome of stakeholder engagement. Why do we want our community to be as diverse as possible? Is because we are called to listen to our stakeholders, as many of them that are out there. And the reality is that all of our stakeholder groups are different. They're diverse. And therefore, there's even twins. If you have identical twins, they're still different. They're going to act and behave and think very differently from each other. And so diversity is the differences that exist in people and our stakeholders, whether employees, government, community members, they are different. And so to be able to listen effectively and communicate across different so that you can achieve business outcomes is critical. But also, when you have an environment, particularly the number one stakeholders are employees. If you want to get the best and retain your employees, because it's very expensive to recruit new employees. So if your goal is to retain the best employees and to get the most out of them that they can contribute to solving your problems in innovative ways and creative ways, looking at problems from different perspectives in order to have better solutions, then you need to make sure that people feel like they belong in that environment and it's free from all the isms that exist: sexism, racism, ethnocentrism, people who discriminate against rural people or lean into stereotypes of regions and countries and what have you. If we can get past those things and create an environment where people feel like they can contribute, then you're going to reap the benefit of better problem solving, better productivity, better retention, what have you. So if you focus on the outcomes of what that diversity is, the outcomes of how of what inclusion can bring to the table, and if you can make sure that you don't have barriers of access to people be able to engage with you at your stores via ramps to come in there for accessibility, or if it is breaks that people can go and be nursing mothers and still be engaged in the workforce. What are those barriers that you need to overcome? Because then you'll have more customers. Then you'll have better employees. Then you'll be able to build and achieve your business objectives. So the key here is, what are you striving for? What are the programs that you're doing? And just like any other program, be it PR or any other business, you have to monitor it. And if it's not working, then you adjust it and then you make it go into the direction of achieving your goal and your outcome. And so success today for diversity, equity, inclusion is defining it clearly, because it does include everybody, all the differences that exist within people, defining what success looks like, and then measuring it, monitoring it so that you can ensure that you're within budget, you're on time, and that you're headed towards the results that you aim for. And if it's not, then you change patterns and you figure out what you're striving to do.
It's as you were speaking, you know, I'm hearing a lot, obviously, but one thing that's just really standing out is, you know, we can remove for a moment, the notion of is this the right thing to do? What's the right thing to do? It's about business. It is a business imperative to listen to your stakeholders. It's a business imperative to retain your best people. This is my opinion. It's a business imperative to have engaged employees. We all know the downside of non-engaged employees. And speaking of global, look at the Gallup numbers of employee engagement, not getting better, not getting better, really, really bad. Organizations, enterprises, doesn't matter whether they're corporate or agency or nonprofits or government, to get done what you need to get done. Diversity, I believe, really supports that. So you're right. Look at it as a business. And I love the notion of the discipline you bring of, having metrics and looking at those metrics. And if the first iteration didn't work, we can try something else, like everything else we do in business to get
Right.
the outcomes we want. So I think there's a lot in what you said. So regardless of one's politics, I think we can agree that we are living in an age of uncertainty. So, what's your best advice to leaders, regardless of where they are, geographically, business setting? If they're leading today and they want to be as effective as possible, despite the uncertainty, what are those hallmarks, do you think?
I think it goes back to being authentic, an authentic leader. You really have to know who you are. You have to know what your values and your morals are. What is your compass? What's your North Star? And then you also have to understand what is the purpose of that organization in which you're leading or that group of people, why they've come together. What is that joining purpose? It might be the mission, but it might be something even deeper than the mission. What is the reason that it exists? And how can you make sure that you align around that mission, but also around the values of the organization and your own personal values and that meshing of the two? Because when you have alignment with the values of the organization or the group that you're trying to move forward, and you're aligned around purpose, then you have a guiding principle. At Page, for organizations, we call it corporate character. And
Mm,
one of the key things that whether if you're a comms person or if you are a leader, a CEO, you're president, or you're just over a group, of employees leading an initiative, it is key that you have alignment and you drive that corporate character and you stay in alignment. Because if not, you'll be veering off into things where you don't have credibility, and therefore people will not trust you to lead in that area and will wonder, why are we doing that? But if your alignment on purpose, if your alignment on values, if you then make sure your policies and your procedures or the activities that you're doing are in line with that, then it'll be a much easier road to travel. But if you try to pretend as a leader that you're somebody that you're not, it's not going to work. You're not going to appear authentic, and people won't trust you in the same way that they won't trust organizations who are doing something different than what they're saying. It has to be authentic. You have to be able to, as a leader, we say prove it with action. That's what Paige says all the time. It's not about what you say, it's about what you do. But then you provide the context around what you do to help share what that vision is and that direction with clear context of communication. And then always telling the truth. Sometimes the truth hurts, but part of
mhm,
authenticity is understanding, hey, you know what? I made a mistake, and this is what I've learned from it, and this is where I'm going. Or, you know what? This was done improperly. I'm going to tell you the truth, and we're going to work on how to fix it and make it better. And then how do we move forward together? But it's being honest with yourself, it's being truthful and honest with others, it's proving it with action. And at the end of the day, it's being authentic to who your own character is and being authentic to that corporate or organizational character, which is that meshing of values, and mission and purpose, and make up who and what the organization is.
it's so true. We know that employees feel more loyal to, feel more engaged when they share certain key values of the organization and the leader. And they don't have to share every value. There's room for all kinds of, philosophical diversity, but there must be, I think, some core values that are shared by organization, leader, and the employees. And when they feel those connections, they do feel more engaged, more loyal, et cetera, et cetera. And if they don't feel it, it's like, what am I doing here? So I think that is so important. And the other thing that all this made me think of a little humorously is that, you know, people's BS meter is very high. And
Yeah.
if you're not being authentic, you may think you're fooling them. You're not fooling anyone. Your teams are talking about you and how that wasn't true. And I will tell you, as a leadership coach, I'll have a session where a leader might say, well, I was really annoyed at, frustrated with, pissed off at, da 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 da, da. And fill in the blank. My client, my business partner, my teams, but they didn't know. And I just want to say, I'm going to call them all right now. And guess what? Guess what they're going to tell me? They absolutely knew. It's so hard to mask that kind of energy, that kind of mindset. And why bother? It's easier, I think, to be our authentic selves. But, not everyone, not everyone is there yet. Hopefully they're getting there. If people want to get in touch with you, what is the best way?
Sure, they can reach out to me via LinkedIn. We can have communication there, but then also can reach out to me through the Page Society as well.
Thank you
So
so much.
www.page.org.
I'm glad you got that in there. Still a PR person, see, even as you're a CEO. So thank you so much, Dr. Ford, for being here, for sharing your wisdom. Really appreciate it. Appreciate you. And if any of you want to reach out to me, you already know the way to find me. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Ken Jacobs with a few initials after my name. And or at KEN at JACOBSCO KEN at JACOBSCOMM.com. And as we always say when we're signing off, until next time, keep on taking the lead.